This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and often a guest visitor, Josie Lewis, who's our head gardener at Perch Hill. And today we're going to talk about July jobs in the garden. So the things that we're doing here at Perch Hill and that we want to nudge you to get on to doing too, to make your gardens as wonderful as they possibly can be. So we've divided them into the sort of edible section and then the flowery section. And the edible section I'm going to start with. So last chance to sow your French beans. So crack on with them now. The sooner in July you can get going with them, the better. And I would still sow these into a root trainer inside on your window ledge or in a greenhouse if you've got one, because it will just get them to germinate more quickly than sowing them direct outside. So crack on with them. And something that we've been doing here is lifting and dividing our rhubarb plants. So just lifting the whole thing up, getting rid of the sort of more congested centre at the clump, and then replanting them. And the thing that Cole, one of the gardeners here, was doing yesterday was doing exactly this, and then topping the whole bed with a good 4-inch mulch of organic farmyard manure. So that's a really, really good thing. As the rhubarb stops cropping, it wants to go into its dormant season and give it plenty of food so it'll crop well next spring. Another couple of things that we're doing right now is planting out purple sprouting broccoli, which we sowed in April, and winter leeks. So, I said that you could still sow leeks at this time of year when we were talking about questions that people asked us. But actually, we sowed some in April, we sowed some in May, we sowed some in June to give us a really good succession. But planting out that first sowing now is a really good job. And then sowing and planting Swiss chard towards the end of July is a really good thing. And that will give us greens to eat all the way through the winter. So it's totally invaluable. I'm a massive Swiss chard fan, and it's a good thing to be sowing. Over to Josie to cover flowers.
Okay, so what we're doing at this time is biennials. We've sown from the end of May onwards through June. So they'll be up now. So we're thinning them out. If you sow them directly, then keep watering them, keep looking at them to see whether they need thinning out at all. If you've sown them in trays like we tend to do here, because we do site a bit in our packed garden, they'll need potting on, ready for planting out in the autumn. And the other thing we start doing now is taking cuttings of perennials. This is an ongoing job through July, August, September. So take cuttings of salvias, pelargoniums. When these are growing really strongly, they root really quickly. Penstemons, anything that you want to increase in number, or anything that needs care over winter. Because we've got so many pelargoniums, we can't fit them all back into the polytunnels. So we take cuttings and we overwinter them as cuttings. The other thing now, in case we've missed some, we're still staking. So we get quite windy days here. So anything that's not staked struggles a bit. So catch up with any staking before the flowers are all horizontal. That's mostly it. And harvesting, as you say, pick sweet peas, cosmos, anything now.
Yes, well, I think perhaps before we finish, we should just talk about what there is out there to harvest. So in terms of edimentals or ornamental edibles or whatever you want to call them, one of my favourite things for harvesting, oddly at this time of year, is a funny kale called spigarello, and it's a cross between a kale and a broccoli. And I'm picking the leaves and the flowers of that right now, and it's fabulous. And also, you're a great radish fan, Josie, and they only take 4 weeks from seed to harvest.
Yeah.
And so they're a fantastic crop for this time of year. And carrots too, eaten straight from the garden. Just wash them under a tap and eat them raw. That's the best way of doing it, I think. And then tons and tons of salads, edible flowers, etc. So all those things like wild rocket is good, lettuce is very good. And then in terms of edible flowers, borage, calendulas, moving on to the dahlias as the weeks go by. Squash, the first squash are just coming into their own. Those little ones called gem squash, which is sort of actually a summer squash, more like a courgette in flavour than the sort of classic pumpkin-y type squash. And I had a globe artichoke for my supper last night. So that's a really lovely thing. And I served it with what I call angelica sauce, which is a salsa verde with hard-boiled egg just crushed into it. Very, very delicious. And those are all fabulous at this time of year. So do you want to just do a resume of flowers we can be harvesting, Josie?
Yes, some of the flowers we're harvesting now. Of course, don't forget to pull your alliums now because the heads will be starting to go over. So you want to store them for winter. So we're pulling all the alliums, pull them by the stalk. The bulb obviously stays in the ground. And we dry them, just hang them upside down somewhere airy and cool to dry. We're picking a lot of alströmerias at this time of year, having such good giving plants, and pull them rather than cut them. This provokes further flower stem formation rather than the cutting. Hardy annuals, there's tons of these to pick now. And the dahlias are just starting really, sort of mid-July, they'll just start to really get going. So we'll be picking them. Yeah, so many things. So the roses, they've had their first flush, but the second flush will soon be with us with a lot of the repeat flowers. So yeah, plenty to pick in the flower garden.
Fabulous. Good. Okay. So those are the things, there's more, of course, we could go on for ages, but those are some highlights of the jobs that we're doing here at Perchill and that we would love you to attend to in your gardens so they go on looking and being as lovely as possible for as long as possible. See you soon. If you've enjoyed this episode of Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, I'd really love it if you reviewed, rated and subscribed on wherever you listen to your podcasts. It'll help new listeners to know that we're here and enable us to keep getting the very best and most interesting guests week after week.